We've got something a little bit different for you today on the podcast. I'm talking to Peter Burks, who's the Chief Executive of the Garden Centre Association. Now, garden centres, there's a lot happening in that space, and we brought on Peter to dissect what's going on, because there are some big changes afoot and some very interesting things going on. This is going to be a great conversation. Let's get into it. Welcome to Grow with Evergreen, the podcast designed to help you grow your business by providing practical insights into all things paid media, creative, and digital strategy. Every episode, we help home, garden, and lifestyle brands with their growth challenges by delving into their business, dissecting what they're doing, and defining a digital growth strategy they can take and deploy into their business. Let's get into it. Right, welcome back, beautiful people. I hope you're all doing well. Darren, how are you, sir? Are you well?
Yeah, very well.
This is I'm just going to segue and get straight into it. This is the first day I've spent with you in, I think, all week.
Yeah.
Because you've been out and about. You've been all over the place.
Before that, you were away for like 2 weeks, and then I was away for like 2 weeks.
There you go. We've hardly seen each other, so we're getting back in tune with one another.
Yeah.
And spending our time creating podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's just get straight into it. I feel a bit rusty. We haven't recorded a pod for a little while.
It's been a while.
Bear with us. We are a little bit sort of like, right, what's going on? Who are we? Where are we? What are we doing?
This whole thing?
Also, you've got a new Mac, so you're busy trying
Yes,
to get
I had to make sure everything was all exactly how I had it.
Far too long
when we
to
did
get
it last time. It took us a lot longer than usual because every time we'd come to sort of ready to record, it's like, oh wait, no, I don't have that entire software that we used to use. So let's quickly get that sorted.
These are the growing pains.
Well, there.
But come on, then give us a little run through for my benefit as much as our viewers and listeners. What have you been up to this week?
I feel like this is becoming a trend. We almost have like an actual sort of professional catch up right here. It's the one time we get a chance.
It is. It's the only time when we're physically sat together. One of us isn't running around.
I've been out for much of this week. It's currently Friday as we're recording this, and I've been out much of the week on creative shoots for our clients.
Where have you been?
I've been to Essex.
Yes, you have.
We've been to garden centres. We've been to hot tub showrooms.
Love a hot tub.
We've also been to Portsmouth. And looking
You've been putting loads of miles in.
I know, yeah.
Lots of brand films, lots of creative.
Yeah, tons of stuff.
You haven't been by yourself, have you?
I haven't been by myself. On one of the days, I was with Archie, who regular listeners will know and love, but also we've been with an extra person because I am overjoyed to introduce Sam, who is...
Say introduce as if she's here. She's not here.
Sam.
Here she is.
Here she is. No, she's actually working from home today, so I couldn't do that even if I wanted to. But Sam is our new senior motion designer and videographer for the creative team at Evergreen. She is an absolute expert when it comes to motion graphics and animation, and she's just a general good all-rounder as well when it comes to video, which is great.
She's a real talent, great addition to the team.
Absolutely.
And she does all the motion graphics. For those who don't know, the motion design, that is all of the moving image, and she can do all the lovely
animated text, animated graphics, all that sort of stuff.
Very cool.
And just very, very cool, and just an extra just string to our bow.
Yeah, it just enables us to, as you say, do even more creative things with the ads, with all the content we're creating. Yeah. Very exciting. So the team is growing, and you've thrown us straight in the deep end by just saying, follow me around the country. We're going to go all over the place.
It's been great.
But as you say, before that, I've been on holiday, so if I'm looking a bit bronze, hopefully I've still got bronze.
I think you've got a little bit of a tan
as soon as I get off the plane, I'm white as a ghost again. Whereas Harriet retains the colour.
I noticed that. I was going to say today,
really
she's got a proper tan.
Yeah, she keeps the tan. I just lose it straight away.
I'm either white or pink. That's there's no in between for me.
But I do have it when I'm away. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm looking good, and then as soon as I get home, I'm like, oh okay, that didn't last for long. Anyway, so yes, well that's that.
But I've noticed something.
Go on.
Well, thanks for doing that, because you're drinking out of something very interesting. If you're a listener, you're going to miss out here, and you might want to tune into the YouTube just to catch up on what's happening. But you've got an Evergreen branded mug.
Yeah, I have.
And what's that sticking out of that mug?
That is an Evergreen branded tea bag. I don't even know what you call this thing that goes with it. Yes, this is a little.
We've got Evergreen tea,
and look, and I've also got coasters.
Oh, look at that.
I've got mugs. Here we go. Look, check that out. There you go. And Evergreen tea bags.
Specifically Evergreen. Pass me one of those. I'm gonna have a this. There we go. Oh yeah. Delicious.
Nice. There you go.
Delicious.
Yeah, and we've got branded tea bags, mugs, and coasters. And if you want to know what we're doing with these things, then you need to check out Uncut, which will probably be out around the same time as this episode goes out. It's a few weeks away from now, because we're working on something a little bit creative, a little creative campaign, and we're having some fun.
We do love to get creative.
We're not going to. I'm not going to divulge more than that on the pod today. But yeah, I'm loving the Evergreen branded mugs. They're very nice. I love the little. I'm a bit of a. I like a sort of a. Yeah, I like the lip on a thing. I quite like a cup and saucer. I don't like a mug so much. I like a cup.
Yes.
So a little, I like it to be, quite dainty. Tea. Yeah. Well, yeah. The pinky's got to go up, and it's I suppose we need almost the tea without the tea bags and doing the
loose
whole,
leaf.
Yeah, a bit of that.
Oh yeah. We've got some of that in the office. Next, that's the next job for our Evergreen tea, Evergreen loose leaf.
Oh, I like that. Anyway, right. So, what are we doing? Where are we? So we've got Peter. Should I just? Are we ready to crack on?
Yeah, let's go. I think I think we can come to the end of our weekly meeting there.
I think we've done the weekly meeting. There you go. So now Darren's been out. I've been cracking on, doing various bits and bobs. So it's just been the Easter break. And it's like you come back after Easter break and your inbox is just rammed.
It just keeps going.
And
unless you're Archie. Which there's nothing.
Who just gets no emails.
No.
I think he said, didn't he? He had one email in about
2 weeks. Insane.
If only. No, mine was, but mine, this is a sign of how things have progressed. Because mine, in years gone by, months gone by, it would be loads of stuff, do this. I need to, now, because we've got such an amazing team and all the management team, they're all just, my inbox is now very different. It's all business development stuff and marketing stuff and sales stuff and can we work with you stuff and lovely, which is really, not that the client stuff's not nice, but that's now not my job. The team are just like done this. And what was really nice is because I've been away, by the time I'd sort of seen, because I was on CC for I looked at it and then the team had already done it, actioned it, was live, it's been done, sorted, and I was just like, and I sort of got back and I was like, is there it? And it was literally a resounding, no, don't worry about it. I was like, this is amazing.
Guess I'll go back on holiday.
It was like, I'm not needed. Fabulous. I'm going to go and do whatever I want to do. So yeah, very, very cool. Right, let's get into, so this is going to be a really interesting conversation. So we asked Peter to come on the pod. So Peter Burks. I'm sure those of you in the Garden Centre space will know who Peter is. And he is the chief exec of the Garden Centre Association, or the GCA, as those of us in the industry call it. He's a lovely chap. I've known him for a while. He's got sort of 40 years experience, degree in horticultural. So real expert in this space. He's been the chief exec of the GCA for a couple of years. And we asked him to come on because I thought it'd be a really interesting conversation around the wider trends that is happening within the garden centre space, and just what's going on, in terms of, we had a pre-chat and he shared some really interesting, this is happening, that's happening. And obviously we are working in this space. We're doing so much in this space. We're always talking to people in this space, working with garden centres. I was at Garden Centre on Wednesday. It's our world. This is our life. And we love it. But we obviously look at it through the lens of marketing. And what the conversations we're increasingly having are what's happening at this sector as a whole. And, sustainability is a really big thing right now. We're seeing a lot of acquisitions in the garden space. Lots of that M&A is going on. So some really interesting pieces. So I thought, let's bring Peter on and just have a conversation around that and see also from a marketing perspective what garden centres are doing, what they're not doing, and so on. So should be quite interesting. A little bit different, not your typical sort of small business owner who we typically have on the pod. But I think for our audience, we know a lot of garden centres watch our content and engage with our content. So I think this is going to be super, super relevant and interesting for those guys.
Absolutely.
Right, should we get him on?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Right, Peter, are you there, my friend?
I am indeed, yes.
There he is. Peter, thank you so much for jumping on. I know you're a very busy man, so appreciate your time and jumping on. Do you want to just give us 30 seconds, the GCA, sort of paint a picture for us?
All right, well, I'll tell you a bit about myself first. So I'm Peter Burks, Chief Executive of the Garden Centre Association. I've worked in the industry, as you already nicely said, for about 40 years. I'm not really that old, but I have worked in the industry all my life. I joined because I enjoyed growing. I think I got that from my father, who was a farmer, but he also used to grow a lot of bedding plants and that sort of thing. And so I wanted to be a grower, went to university, read horticulture, and then joined really growing, and realised fairly soon afterwards it's about selling it. So that was my move into the garden centre world, and I've been there ever since. In my time as running an independent garden centre, I joined the GCA. Probably that was about 20 years ago now, I would say. Really just to be part of a decent sized organisation rather than one, little garden centre on your own, when you don't really know whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, and whether your ideas are in tune with everybody else's or not. And from that, I became chairman in 2012 and 2013, which is one of these positions that you do for a couple of years and then somebody else bumps you off and you disappear into the wilderness for a few years. And then fortunately, this job came along just over two years ago, and I was fortunate enough to be taken on by the GCA. So here I am and enjoying it very much. Thank you.
Very good. I love that. And in terms of your role in the GCA, then just give us, for those, most of our audience, most of the garden centres that engage with our content are going to know what GCA is. But for those that don't, what is the GCA in a nutshell?
So the GCA Garden Centre Association was formed almost exactly 60 years ago now by some forward-thinking nurserymen, as they would have been back then, to talk about growing plants in containers and then being able to market them 12 months of the year, whereas back then it was really only a thing that was done through the winter period and maybe a little bit in the springtime. And anyway, it's grown from the garden centres that they were then a completely new concept back then. We now have nearly 220 individual garden centre members, and we also have what we call associate members. So that is things like nurseries, manufacturers, service providers, really anybody who wants to engage with our members. And so, my role really is obviously keeping all our members happy, no matter what side of the fence they sit, and also organising the various different things we do for the members, like we do inspections where they all get inspected every year, which is something that's going on now, keeps the standards up and enables them to be sort of like viewed by an outsider. We do an e-learning platform. We run a barometer of trade, which gives people an idea about how trade is going. And that's really, I keep all that running along so the members have got hopefully engaged and know what the industry's up to.
And you have your annual sort of event, don't you, at the start of the year?
Yes, we do. We have a conference once a year, annual conference, always the last Monday and Tuesday of January. So we've had it this year already. 2-day event, well, sort of 2.5 days really. Well, actually, this year was really 3 days because we did a retail safari in London on the Sunday, which was very popular, very successful. And then we have 2 days of full-on conference, which covers, again, we have quite a few different speakers about different topics and also feedback from other parts of the industry, from the HDA, the RHS, and organisations like that.
Before we go any further, are you enjoying today's episode? If so, you'll love our other show, Tea Talks. They're short, informal chats where the Evergreen experts and I share actionable nuggets on all things paid media, creative, and digital strategy that we use daily when growing our clients' businesses. And best of all, much like this podcast, it's completely free. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, see the link in the description. Now, let's get back to it. So would you mind, what I'm thinking we'll do today then, because the format's going to be a little bit different to what we would normally do, but what I thought we would do is if we sort of start, and I just would really value your thoughts on what you're seeing in the sector. So what's happening just generally right now, sort of get your take on that. And then I've got some questions and I've just got some thoughts on things we're seeing. But just to paint us a picture, if you wouldn't mind, in terms of what's happening that you're seeing across your 220 odd members within the sector as a whole.
Right. Well, the good news, if you like, at the moment is the thing that everybody's talking about is how busy everybody is business-wise. And that has come as a real bonus at the start of this year, nice and early. Everybody in the industry knows that the peak months are mid-March to mid-June, or Mother's Day to Father's Day. And, we do need at least, 4 to 6 weeks of good weather, good gardening weather in that time, really, to sustain us over the whole year. Last year, that didn't happen at all. So the year was really a bit of a disaster, sort of saved a bit by good trade running up to Christmas. But the good news is this year, from early March, the weather came good and everybody's been busy, and that's been absolutely wonderful news. And of course, it does bring with it its challenges, if you like, because the nurserymen have got to try and keep up. Our suppliers have got to try and keep up supplying, and that is a challenge, and it's a challenge for the garden centres to make sure their buyers are on top of things and things are coming in. And obviously the nurserymen, they can't make the plants necessarily grow faster, but again, it's about organising them coming out and keeping the shelves stocked and the places looking good. So, whilst busyness is a challenge, if you like, but it's also really good to have.
It's a good challenge. It's a challenge we like, right? We'd rather have it that way around. And our clients are feeling exactly the same in terms of those we're working with. We've been seeing. We went up to Scotland a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we did.
Been, this week you've been over to Essex, and it's all garden centres. It's all got plants and stuff like that. And as you say, the consensus has been, I can't get it in quick enough. But we've seen that, and so that's super useful. Right, before I've just realised I've done my usual. I've forgotten again. I am useless.
We need a card. I need to hold
this
something.
You are going to have to get something that flashes at me. Right, before we move on, Peter, we're going to just segue ever so slightly, but put your thinking cap on, because it is time for Paid Media Mystery. Let's do it.
That's right. It's time once again for a Paid Media Mystery, one of my favorite segments of the show, where I ask a question to both Aaron and our guest. And of course, it's always related to the industry we're talking about. And for the people at home listening, it's multiple choice, so you can give it a go as well.
Come on, let's get it right.
So today, our question is, what type of paid media campaign performs best for driving seasonal footfall to UK garden centres? So I'll say the question again. Okay. What type of paid media campaign performs best for driving seasonal footfall to UK garden centres? The answers you can choose from are A, Facebook event promotion ads, B, Google display network campaigns, C, Google local services ads, or D, Instagram Reels.
Oh, that is a toughie, that one. That is tough. Peter, have you got any ideas?
I'm going to say it's either A or D. I'm going to go for Instagram.
Okay.
Instagram. So you went A or D. That was Facebook.
A was Facebook event promotion. So you've gone
straight to social.
B is Google display network campaigns. C is local service ads on Google, and D is Instagram Reels.
Yeah, my instinct was again exactly the same. Was
A or D?
Was social.
Facebook.
It's got to be social because it's more visual. That's my thinking.
So which are you going for, Facebook or Instagram?
Okay, Peter's got Instagram. Yeah. What was the A? What was A?
Facebook event promotion ads.
I am going to go for that one. Just thinking about the demographic for garden centres. I'm going to go A.
And the correct answer is Facebook event promotion ads.
The expert.
Yes, I think you are absolutely right there, Aaron. It's that demographic.
See, we don't work in this sector for nothing, is it? Yeah, I thought if you think of the average target demographic, there you go. Typically 40 plus. I think that's got Facebook written all over it. But Instagram can't be far off that.
No, I think it was a close second.
Yeah, I think it's got to be. And then, to be honest, even the Google stuff, certainly the localized stuff. But it was in the question you said for driving seasonal
footfall.
Footfall, but didn't you say events or something in that? What was the question?
The question was just seasonal footfall.
Was it just seasonal footfall?
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. There you go. See, so for those that doubt Facebook and the prominence of Facebook and does it still work and stuff, absolutely. They're so many. Maybe the kids less so in terms of these days they're on your TikToks.
They are.
But I think for certain demographics,
and some of us oldies.
Yeah, well, you are. I'm not. I'm in that. I think. What are we generation wise?
Millennials.
Am I a millennial?
You're an early millennial. I'm a late millennial. I'm almost a zillennial, which is like in between millennial Gen Z.
So why do I sit? So
you're like right at the beginning of millennial. I'm right at the end of millennial.
What's before
Gen X?
Right. Okay.
So you're
so
not quite verging on Gen X, but you are.
No,
You're
I'm
much closer to it than I am.
Yeah. Thanks.
Whereas I'm.
You're much closer than I am. But yeah, no, I think as you say, for the in this, when the garden centers, these brands we're working, it's that 40 plus sort of demographic, and I think that is still very, very popular on the Facebook.
So there you go. That is another paid media mystery.
Love it. Good work. Amazing. I love that he gets them so good. He gets them always bang on relevant and super relevant.
But also, I thought we should also point out that today is going to be the first episode where we actually have another segment at the end of the episode. It's another game. It's going to be slightly different, but it's called Paid Media Problems. And we're actually, I think we have mentioned it once or twice before where we've asked people to send in some questions.
This is the first episode where we're doing it, though.
It is. So we've got a question sent in from one of our listeners or viewers, and they've sent us in a little question, a paid media problem.
Paid media problem. So
we are going to answer live, and you've not seen it.
No.
I've prepared this, and
it's great. But we asked, and we'll ask again. So for those of you that, if you've got a question or something, you're running ads or you've just got something. How does this work? What do we do here? When should we do this? Does this work? Should I be doing that? Anything like that? Very specific question. It can be as technical, as creative as you want. Ping it in. You can DM Darren or me, I suppose. You can
send an email to
hello@theevergreenagency.co.uk.
That's it.
Or send a carrier pigeon, however you want. But get in touch. Send your paid media problem, and then we'll note it down. And then we're going to do one, maybe two, probably one an episode of just as a little thing at the end of the episode. So I've not seen it, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it at the end, though.
Yes, right at the end.
Right, okay, he's in charge. I just do what he tells me. So okay, fine, that's good. So amazing, Peter. Getting back to it's going well. Always helps when the sun shines. Anything else? But costs is a big thing that's everyone's seemingly talking about in the space right now. Are they not?
Yes, definitely, and that would have been the big talking point back in our conference and January and February. In fact, really, ever since the autumn budget, when the these increase in minimum wage, and the increase in the national insurance was discussed and agreed, to be brought in. So businesses have been working on what can they do to alleviate the problems, because it's going to wipe out an awful lot of profit from all of our members. Despite the government trying to say that it doesn't affect most businesses, well, of course it does. Of course. So there's been, it really has filled the airwaves. It's just been constant. What are you doing? What are you doing? And people have done things like reduce their opening hours by closing a bit earlier in the evening. A lot of look at rotas and that sort of thing. But I have to say that I've been really pleased and enthused, if you like, by the fact there's been also a lot of trying to tackle this from the other end. It's not just about reducing costs, because my view is if you keep cutting, you cut, you'll end up with nothing.
Absolutely.
And we are a very people-friendly business. Customers come to garden centres to see people, to talk to people, to get advice. And so you have to have a reasonable level of staffing. And, they're also huge physical buildings and plant areas and that sort of thing. You can't staff that with the odd one person. You've got to have quite a significant number of people, and of course plants need looking after, don't they? They need watering, they need putting out, they need weeding, all those sorts of things, and we need people. So I think cutting is not the answer. And I'm really pleased to hear that the number of businesses that have approached this by saying, how can we actually increase our sales, maybe increase our margin by being a little bit more efficient, a little bit more clever with what they do, but certainly using the staff, which is again our biggest asset. Every team is the team is your asset, isn't it? And a well-run team, as Sir Alex Ferguson would probably tell us, is all down to the manager. But it is, and it's about the team coming up with good ideas about how they can improve the sales and improve what people are buying. And
I think that's what we're seeing is, gun centers are, and those in the space are, a lot of them I'd say, well, look, we're just going to grow our way through this. We're going to grow our way out of this. And I think, as I say, that from a marketing perspective, there's lots of things that I think increasingly garden centers are waking up and realizing, and actually we're sitting on a lot of data. We're sitting on a lot of opportunity. We're sitting on, there's this thing called the internet that actually, if we focused more on it, we could leverage this to our benefit, to exactly to the point of the paid media mystery, to raise brand awareness, to highlight key events, key times of the year, key seasonal, products that are just coming in. And I think that we're seeing a lot of that. And that's one of the angles of attack that we're taking for those we're working with, is saying, actually, how do we exploit and leverage that to squeeze more revenue, to increase that average order value, increase that lifetime value, get that customer back in the garden center. All of those things add to the top line, which has a trickle down effect and helps, with those, as you say, those increasing staff costs and so on. So
definitely. And I think, from just in saying my time in the GCA, I identified quite early on we weren't really focusing enough on, for example, social media. So in part of our inspection process, we've added social media inspection into the process to see what people are doing. And of course, there are people doing this really well, and equally there's people either paying a bit of lip service to it or not really doing it at all. So that's a really good example of an opportunity, I think, almost across the industry, of ways of improving their social media content, how they approach it. Make sure that it's, it is social media. I always like to say it's not commercial media. It's not about constantly price. People want to be entertained or informed,
exactly
educated,
that.
and that's the key way. And
I think I remember. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to just say, if you engage more people, which that is another thing I think they are beginning to do, and getting the you mentioned earlier about Facebook being aimed at our sort of customer, which is definitely true. But I think social media helps to get in a whole load of other people as well.
Of course it does, yeah. I mean, it's interruption marketing, a great way to think about social media, whatever platform, whether it's your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your TikToks, your Pinterest, it's interruption marketing. They may not be searching and actively looking, but if they're local, particularly garden centers, it's a local audience, it's a local play. If they're local and you can target the demographic, there's a good chance you can say, hey, we're doing this thing, or we've got these, whatever it might be, and we're just around the corner from you. That nudge marketing, that interruption marketing can be very, very effective. And I think I remember the last time we spoke, you were telling me that you guys do that in the inspections when it comes to social media, which I think is such a great idea. And that's a real good example of showing how what you're doing is looking at that full sort of omni-channel experience that the customer's going to have, which is great. And I just want to segue very slightly and just give those garden centers, because there'll be garden centers listening and watching in thinking, oh, that's really interesting from a social media perspective. We don't do anything. And just to pick up on your point that social media, whichever channel you choose to exploit, hugely powerful. And the great thing is with that, particularly if you run ads to it, is you can get very specific in terms of where you target. And just some key things to think about is social media is a great way, exactly to your point, Peter, about use it as to entertain, to educate, to inform. Everything doesn't have to be polished. It's great if you can, get your phone out and take some selfies and, oh, we've just had this delivery and we're just doing this and here's what this is up to and here's what that's up to. And that can be really, really powerful to just show and reflect, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is what we're up to.
And thank goodness for that, because if it had to be polished all the time, I'd struggle, honestly. The amount of stuff we'd have to do extra if we had to make everything look like a Hollywood production.
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be. I just say, it's whether you shoot on a phone or whether you do the creative, like the sort of creative you do.
That's it.
Where now, whenever you go to a shoot, you deliberately say to me, you always come back and say, we've got some really good sort of UGC style content.
We're always trying to push for that stuff.
Sorry, for those that don't know, user generated. So it's got that unpolished, that sort of kind of rough around the edges.
It does. Because that's the thing. This is the thing. When we do ads, we do a mixture of things, because variety is always best. But we will do the high production stuff.
Yep.
We'll we'll do storyboards, we'll do scripts, we'll do all that sort of stuff. We'll do loads of B-roll, we'll do drone shots and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time as doing that, over the last couple of days, in every single place that I've been to, I've made sure that as well as that stuff, I've just spoken to the owners of these businesses and gone, you were telling me about that thing that makes you unique before.
Yeah.
Why don't we just get a shot of you walking through the business, just talking to camera about that? And it takes 15 seconds to film that.
Yeah.
It's one camera. It's just a mic and a camera, and that's it. And that's all it does. And that can be just as effective, if not more effective, than the whole bells and whistles approach.
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%. I completely agree with that, and I think that's it. And we've got some clients. I'm going to give a couple of our clients a shout out, because we've got some clients that do this incredibly well, and not just for their ads. And that's the thing I want to get to is that if you're watching this, if you're in this space, garden centers, the products that they are selling and those in the space, it's such a beautiful product. It sells itself. Let the product be the champion, and just showcase that in a variety of different ways, whether it's paid, whether it's, organic, putting your own stuff out there. And we've got some clients that do this incredibly well through their own stuff that they just shoot on their phone. And so go and check out, there's a brand, it's not a garden center, but they work with plants very specifically. Garden on a Roll. Check those guys out. They're one of our clients. They're the loveliest people. And they do such a good job with their content. So Garden on a Roll, go and check those out. You find them on Instagram, you find them on all the socials, on their website. But check out what they do, because they are a great example of a brand. We're doing all their ads, but from an organic perspective, they are forever just on camera. They're shooting their content, they're sharing ideas, they're informing, they're educating, they're entertaining. Real mix of stuff, and it doesn't look polished. It's not high production for the most part. It's just shot, and it's very, very effective. And that is having a very positive impact. But we've got other, we've got like garden centers that just do that. They're forever. Perrywood is a client that we work with.
That's where I was on Wednesday.
Down in Essex. Those guys do an amazing job. They're forever posting across their socials. This is what the team is up to. This is where we are. Yeah. And again, it's all very organic. It's all very authentic. And we take bits of that into their ads. And then when it comes to ads, of course, like anything, when you pay to play, so when you feed Meta or Google, and Meta is Facebook and Instagram, when you give these platforms, some of your hard-earned money, of course, you get better tools and options in terms of targeting and so on and so forth. But that combination of thinking, well, what can we do from an organic perspective? And then what can we supersede that with paid to get really targeted, and a mix of creative can be hugely effective.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So if you're not doing it, go and look at these garden centers and these gardening brands that are doing it really, really well, and think, actually, we could do a bit of that. We could do a bit of that. Right, Peter, wanted to talk about, so the costs are increasing, I think, and as you say, some garden centers are just deciding to sort of grow through that. One trend we've seen, and I really want to get your take on this, is there seems to be a lot of M&A going on right now. Lots of mergers, lots of acquisitions. Do you want to just give us your thoughts on what you're seeing across your members?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there was actually, I think it was the Daily Mail put some article saying, garden centres were closing down. This was a couple of months ago now, whereas, of course, that wasn't true at all. It was only really that Dobbies, which used to be one of the biggest chains in the country, needed to lose a few of their sites for financial reasons, and so quite a few of their sites came on the market and were sold on, and some of those have gone on to the chains like British Garden Centres bought quite a few, Blue Diamond bought a few. But quite a few of them went to independents, so they are now perhaps one of two members in a little group, if you like.
Sure. Yep.
And that was one part of this discussion. The other one was, of course, Homebase, which ceased to trade, and they had garden centres. But really, the garden centres that Homebase have aren't what we would call really a garden centre. No. Yes, they sell gardening products, and they sell an awful lot of gardening products, or they used to. So it's not, but they were really just garden retail, really, rather than a garden centre.
Yes, yeah.
And I think the press picked up on this and sort of thought that there's some disaster going on in the industry. But I think in some ways it couldn't be further from the truth. I do hear that there's quite a lot of garden centres on the market now. I mean, I'm not in a position really to say whether there's more at the moment or less. And you'd probably say at the moment I'd be surprised really, because you trade through the busy period and then perhaps take a look at your figures after in June and say how are we looking? Are we going to survive the rest of the year? Do we think we can survive a few more years, or and so do we need to move the business on or not? But I think for my part, I think mostly the Dobby centres were all struggling for some time before they
Sure.
got moved on, so they will be much better centres for their local communities now than they were before, and I think it's actually good news for the industry. Really good
I
news for
agree.
the industry.
Yeah, I think so. I would completely agree. What do you think are looking ahead then to, as I say, it looks like it's shaping up to be a pretty good year, and despite some of the curveballs that are being thrown by the government and various changes that are happening outside of the sector specifically, but in terms of looking ahead to the future, what are you seeing across your members that future trends and sort of things like that? Like what are the conversations you're having across your members? I'm just curious what that sort of looks like.
Yeah, so I think that the good news, if you like, is that because we'll always be driven by, and actually, funny enough, not so much the current economic climate, but more the weather. So if the weather suits, then we're always going to be looking good and doing well.
Sure.
Hence this moment, and how last year was not good.
Yep.
But it's also interesting to see that at this moment in time, I'll certainly say our March figures in our barometer of trade show us that the increase in sales wasn't just in plants and gardening, which was very significant, but it actually was quite across the board, which means that the people who are coming into garden centres are also still spending money on gifts, and are definitely still spending money in the food halls and the restaurants. And I think really garden centres over the last few years, the quality of the shopping experience has improved dramatically.
Yes. Yep.
The leaky greenhouse shops have, in many ways have disappeared completely. You have smart, modern, retailing buildings.
Sure.
And, people can, I would say, we're really good because you can park easily and for free. There's a large, warm, undercover space which you can shop no matter what the weather. Always a good restaurant, the quality of the food in the restaurant, and a lot of it now homemade or
Sure.
locally sourced, which, as you were talking about, sustainability is another
Yep.
very important part of that. And that keeps people coming in. As one very famous member of our industry once said, my customers garden twice a year, but they eat every day.
Exactly. It's true.
And
Well, it does it. It segues us lovely into that. Garden centre are destinations. And no one
yes,
watching this is not going to know that, but it's they. They are and I think the garden centres are increasingly diversifying. We're seeing a lot of expansion. We're seeing a lot. I
yes,
say we're seeing quite a lot of M&A and that
yes,
diversification in terms of we need to become a destination. I think it's really interesting. I've got some really juicy stats here that are fab that we sort of pulled pre-recording. So did you know? So I'm sure you're going to know this. 68% of UK adults visited a garden centre last year, which is a
yeah,
huge percentage. And this stat I found fascinating, owing to your point about cafes and restaurants and becoming destinations and wanting to attract. A big trend we're seeing and very aware of is the garden centres. And we were at the Garden Centre Expo last year, and the amount of conversations we had around becoming more of a destination, diversifying, what else could and should we be doing. And what one of the recurring themes was, we want to broaden our appeal. So we want to get young families. We want to get those that couples going out on dates, and the cafes and restaurants is a great way to do that. And then while they're there, they're going to buy some product. But one of the stats is that there was 148 million visits to garden centre cafes and restaurants last year in 2024,
wow,
which is an incredible. It's 148 million visits. Now, how accurate that is, obviously, but 148 million visits to cafes and restaurants in 2024 into garden centres, which is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
So I think it for me, when we're looking at it, it sort of paints a picture of how garden centres are, as you say, they are evolving and they are putting more time and energy and effort into outside of the plant, but actually what else could we be doing here?
yeah. And I
And I
think
think
also
that's
that ties into their role within the communities, as they are very good at
absolutely.
liaising and working with their local communities. And I do think that's another thing, actually, where, again, coming back to social media, a lot of the best at doing this are also posting a lot of information about what they do, how they link with their local community and what they do with the local community. So again, it's not just like trying to sell. You're talking about, look at us, we're actually really good for our local community. You can come here and rent one of our rooms, or put on a
Exactly that.
show, or have your sweet pea show here, or whatever it might be. Garden centres do an awful lot of that, and the restaurant, obviously, again, is, as you say, very important. It keeps people coming in, and it's a place to meet, place to
Yeah. It acts as a
enjoy.
focal point, and it's giving people a reason to go there. It's increasing the time that someone is in the garden centre, which in
Yeah,
turn increases the likelihood of getting the average spend for that person, in the
yeah,
garden centre, etc. So it's very, and I think, as I mentioned Perrywood earlier, who's one of our clients. Perrywood do a very good job of exactly that, of making sure that they're very entrenched. I mean, they're busy expanding; they've just taken on a third site, and they are making sure that they're very entrenched in that community. Make sure they're giving back. Make sure they're doing a lot within to engage the local community and really bring them along with them. And I think doing that, and that again, that ties back to another point I want to make with regards to paid media, and just in terms of a very practical way that we're using this is, you can take very easily, a garden centre can take what they're doing and all of the good things that they're doing and use social media, use Google Ads to essentially stay top of mind and get their key messages, their key seasonal messages, their key sort of things on their marketing calendar in front of their audience and keep them there. Because if you're, and the big thing here that I know that for a fact that lots of garden centres are sitting on and is a lot of data. And there are
yes.
lots of garden centres that have got lots of data, often going back years, that they're just not leveraging. And as
No,
long
you're
as you've
right.
captured, this is a sort of a little top tip, but as long as that data has been captured in a GDPR compliant way, then you can re-leverage that, as well as sending emails. Garden centers, generally speaking, are pretty good at sending emails out and making just, oh, we're running this. It's Mother's Day. It's this. It's that. It's the other. But what you can also do with that data is you can re-leverage and repurpose that data and essentially plug it into your Metas and your Googles to then be able to show those core seasonal and marketing messages in front of that audience, not relying on them to open an email or even to search, but on, say, a Facebook and an Instagram, you could just pop up and say, hey, did you know next week we're running this event, or coming up is we're doing this, or we've got this promotion, or we're doing this seasonal special. All of those things is very, very powerful. And it ties back to what we were saying at the start of the episode in terms of the most powerful ways to increase that footfall. And the work that we're doing with Garden Centers very specifically is to drive footfall. It's to get our key messages in front of our target audience within a local area and then drive footfall into the garden center. And
Yes.
one side note on that, because I'm sure there'll be people, I know from conversations I've had in the past, they'll be thinking, well, that sounds great, but how do we measure and how do we track it? The honest answer is, with some of this stuff, is unless you're going to run a coupon code or a discount in some way where it's like, oh, you have to click this link or register on this page. And some of our clients, we're not doing that for. It's just simply a sense of, you run this campaign and a high tide raises all the boats. So some of it you're not going to be able to directly measure. It's just a case of saying, well, actually, if we run this campaign, we're going to increase the footfall. We know last year what we did on this weekend, this bank holiday weekend, and now we're going to measure it versus what we put in versus what we put out. And sometimes that's fine to do. That is fine to do. You don't need it to be, I need to measure and track every single pound. But actually, if we look at it and we speculate to accumulate, and sometimes that is just the best way. Don't overcomplicate. I think sometimes people think when it comes to marketing, particularly paid media and marketing, they think, oh, well, we need to track and measure every pound in. You can, but often that just creates barriers to entry, and I think it prevents people
Yeah,
from
no,
doing
I
it.
think you're dead right with that, because you're right. People do like to think, well, if I spend this, and I'm going to advertise my barbecues, am I going to sell more barbecues, or how many more do I sell?
Yeah,
But what we've already said about educating people, entertaining them, that does
exactly
lead to
that.
sales. It does lead to sales, because
Yeah,
people are then engaged with you. They're going to come to you rather than somewhere else, and you're going to make those sales as a result of it. You can't necessarily say how or why that's occurred,
yeah,
but like you
exactly that.
say,
Exactly that.
overall, if the sales figures are rising, you're doing something right, aren't you?
And I think that, you've hit the nail on the head. That is exactly, I think, as an overarching trend, not just in the garden centre space either, but as an overarching trend, that is what's happening. Is, as you know, even with the way attribution now, when it comes to sales and lead generation, the way attribution is now modelled, we're in a DDA world, which is data-driven attribution, which what that means is the attribution, the credit for a sale, a lead, is attributed now across multiple touch points. It's because the average Google, Meta, all these platforms know that the average user has multiple, we're all bombarded with media and messages 24/7. They know that a customer is going to see your brand, your key messaging in multiple places. Online, offline, search, social, email, all over the place. And so now the way attribution works is these platforms say, well, look, we can't say that they saw that ad and that was the kicker for them visiting the garden centre, buying the product, becoming a lead, downloading, whatever. Therefore, we're going to spread it and say, well, actually, it was a combination of all of these factors. So a big trend we've seen in the last couple of years is saying to businesses, don't try and nail down and say, well, this channel accounted for this and this channel accounted for that. It goes back. Do you know what I love, Peter? Is the really old, well, the way we work, Evergreen, we work in a very modern 21st, century industry. And we do, it's very cutting edge what we do. That said, I love the good old marketing principles of the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. And that keep it simple kind of philosophy. And the whole idea, there's a great saying that goes from many, many moons ago, which is 50% of my marketing works. I just don't know which 50%, right?
That 100% agree. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? That is beautiful. And that is so true. And that's the irony of how much the industry's evolved. And yet we're still in that place, business. And even the businesses that we're working with, and we've got all the data and all the tools and all the metrics and all of the good stuff. There's still an element of we have to turn around and say, well, look, ultimately, you need to look at it as a sum of the parts. You're investing this in, and ultimately, let's look at the correlation over a number of weeks, and let's look at trend lines to see you're putting this in, and this is what you're going to get out. Now, what Google Ads says one week and Meta Ads says the next, it's going to fluctuate because these platforms, they're all walled gardens. They all want to take the credit because, Meta wants you to spend more on Meta. Google wants you to spend more on Google. So you as a business, whether you're a garden center or whatever, you need to look at it and say, well, look, if we invest into these platforms, not just with ads, but if we spend more time creating content for organic socials, what's the correlation over a period of time? Yeah, and doing that with consistency, you see it has, as long as you're doing it well, and particularly for garden centers when you do it locally, because it's common sense, right? If you are running campaigns, promotions, you've got things happening in the garden center, key events, new services, new offerings, it makes common sense dictates that it makes sense to tell people within a half-hour radius that's what you're doing.
Yes,
it's
like you
just
said,
logical,
I agree too about driving footfall. We all my time in garden centres, we would always try and just to make sure the advertising, if you like, brings people in, and
Absolutely.
then it's up to our job, we would say, as the team within, to then make sure that our stock or our products, our displays are appealing enough to make sure we can sell something to those people when they come in. So things like driving people into the restaurant nowadays is so important because that gets people in, and then you've got a captive audience then to sell to, and
exactly that.
Hopefully,
And a big thing
they've
as
already
well,
been influenced by social media before they get to you.
Exactly that, and it can be a kicker because they might not be thinking, or they might not be thinking, oh, we're going to pop to the garden centre this weekend. But if they can then see an ad and say, hey, such and such has just arrived in, and it's get it before it's gone type thing. Right, well now I'm going. I wasn't planning on going, but now I'm going to be going. So it's all those things. And I think the other big thing that I don't know how if how much you talk to your members about this, but is the data capture side of it, is the omni-channel experience, and thinking about not only we're talking about leveraging the the online side, but actually using the in-store visits to capture data so that you can then take that data and plug that into the online side. So it just becomes this feedback loop. And that becomes, and there's lots of creative ways that you can do data capture. You have QR codes on the tables where you get people to sign up for a discount. And there's so many creative ways you can do it, where you input your email address. Hey, you're on our email database. If we're plugging that email database into these platforms, we can now keep you top of mind, or keep our brand and our key messages top of mind for you in the days, weeks, and months ahead. And that becomes very, very powerful. The lifetime value on a customer is just, exponentially increases, because you're not relying on the only time you can sell to that customer is when they're in the store or when they're in the garden center. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
amazing.
Very good.
Right, I want to just quickly talk about sustainability, because I know of all of the stuff, sustainability is one of the biggest talking points in the sector. It was last year when we were at all the various garden conferences that we were at. What are your thoughts? What are your members saying when it comes to sustainability? Looking ahead, what do you think is going to be some of the key sort of things that are happening when it comes to sustainability?
Well, within the GCA, we place a very high score on this. One of the things we've done again in our inspection process, which covers basically everything in a garden centre, from how it looks like when the inspector turns up on the roadside, through the car park, through all the retail departments. And it scores everything. But we've also get them to score what they see around sustainability. So it could be as simple as what's their policy on their website. Do they have solar panels? Do they recirculate their water? But also it's like, where do they source product from? Obviously there's a lot around peat free and that sort of thing now.
Sure.
So sustainability to us is really a core thing. But I do think, garden centres are, absolutely the gardening industry, if you like, is the actual ultimate in being able to drive good environmental practice and, hopefully change to reduce the amount of carbon we're all using. And, that's where garden centres are in pole position to do that. So I think,
I was going to say, we're very well placed as a sector.
Yeah, we sell these plants, which, fun enough, take carbon dioxide and turn it into oxygen. And, that couldn't be more positive, could it? And whilst the industry does get a bit of stick, and in some cases rightly so, for either selling a lot of giftware, which you could argue is sometimes a bit tatty, but actually that's not true across all garden centres. And it's one thing we stress with our members. We again looked for more local sourcing, things that are made out of, say, recycled plastic, things that can be recycled once they've been used. Stuff around Christmas, don't have glitter, which obviously is an awful thing for recycling. So there's a lot of work going on within the industry on making sure those sorts of things are right. And as in, the other thing we get told is, well, you sell all these awful chemicals, which kill things. Well, fortunately, most of them are very safe. They're not dangerous. And, the amount that you actually do sell now is a very, very small amount compared to what it might have been, 20 or 30 years ago. And so, there isn't really much of that at all. And I think the industry, again, is much more educated and knows that, what we want to be doing is encouraging our customers to use the green products, encouraging our customers to be doing recycling, and of course composting, for example, is a very big thing now. Saving their water, all those things. And garden centres are real experts on this. And I would hope that our customers, certainly when you talk to a customer in the plant area and they're interested in buying a shrub, nearly always now the conversation is around, when it's in flower, does it attract the butterflies? Does it attract the bees? Because that's what people want. And, nowadays you don't sell much that doesn't do that sort of the good, environmental stuff, which again is a very positive thing.
And there are some really interesting brands. We've had a couple on the pod recently, actually. We had Seaborn, which was a really lovely brand.
Very
nice. They do they're really nice. And there's a lot in the space. There's a lot of innovation happening at the moment with sustainability front and center. And check out Seaborn. That's another brand. They've actually been on the pod. They're really lovely. Brand. Really nice. Those guys
are. They sent us a couple of oddballs, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, oddball. Yeah, there you go. They're really really good actually, and they do it with Wild Sea. Really nice stuff. So make sure you check those guys out. Last question, Peter, and then we have to wrap this up. Just wanted to get your thoughts lastly on e-commerce. You know, it's an interesting conversation we're having. You know, some garden centers are really sort of thinking, oh, we need to, you know, there's an opportunity there. We need to really double down. Others are more wary of it and sort of reluctant to say, no. The focus is still very much footfall into the stores. What are you seeing? Are you talking about e-commerce much with your members? What are your thoughts?
Right. So I do think it is a bit of a hard one to call, because some businesses that were doing this, say, pre-COVID, used to do really quite well in it. During COVID, of course, a lot of garden centres had to suddenly reinvent themselves as to doing it online because they were closed. And so that really drove a lot of very rapid change. But I do see a lot of that has gone back again, and people don't see that it's a necessary part of the business. And I think whilst there'll always be some call for this sort of thing, and home delivery and that sort of thing. But actually, plants are very difficult. Plants are very, almost like a touchy-feely product. You need to be able to see them, because a plant in a picture is not always what you get when you buy it online. You need to be able to see how nice it is, how nice the flowers are, smell the flowers and those sorts of things. You need to actually see them physically. And whilst you could buy, your fertilizers and that sort of thing online, and they're always going to be the same, I'm not entirely sure that is
it's interesting. We're seeing
product.
We're seeing a mix. I mean, we've got some that are in this exact space that are e-commerce, but then we've also got garden centers that are not e-commerce. And I think what, as a middle ground, what we're starting to see is a bit of a trend. It's a bit early, but I think it might increasingly become a trend. Is garden centers want to leverage that, particularly as they think more online. What could and should they be doing? And what we're seeing some do is say, look, we're going to have partial e-commerce, and we're going to have certain, like your compost, for example, certain products that where it's you can order it online, but then you're going to pick it up. We're not going to do delivery. Some are doing delivery, but there's certain, the bigger stuff, the bulkier stuff.
Furniture.
That sort of stuff. We can either deliver it or you can pick it up, but they're not going to get into the classic sort of picking and packing side of e-commerce. And I think that as a bit of a halfway house seems to be where some of the garden centers we're talking to are sort of settling on. We're either doing that, or that's where we think, as far as we think we're going to take it, which is interesting. But then you've got the others that are all in on e-commerce, and it's working really well for them. So I think there's a mix there, but there definitely seems to be more appetite for, we either want to do some of it, or no, we want to add this. I'm talking to another one at the moment where they're saying, no, we're not doing it, but we absolutely want to go, warts and all into e-com. So it's really interesting. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Have you got any questions, Peter? Anything else you want to discuss or go through?
No, I don't think so. I think
we're all good.
Covered it on really, really well. Yeah.
Well, this has been really good fun. I really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, so thank you so much for jumping on. It's been a bit different, but it's been really useful. And I just really value getting your sort of input and thoughts on the sector. I know this is going to be seen and watched and listened to by lots of the members. So if we're not connected, then do connect with me on LinkedIn and make sure you follow a lot of our content, because we regularly talk about what is happening within the garden centre space and sector. We've done various episodes of the pod, as well as we had Perry Wood on the podcast about a year ago, Hannah, who's lovely, and then we've obviously done Tea Talks on it, which is our other show. I'll give that a little shout out, shall I? So Tea Talks, if you don't know, Tea Talks is our little show where the Evergreen team get together and we just delve into and get into a topic and ask some really key questions that we know you're thinking, and we sort of dissect them, and we bring on different members of the Evergreen team to share their expertise, and we try to reflect what we're actually doing. So it's kind of tested and proven concepts and ideas and campaign strategies and structures and all of the nitty-gritty stuff of this is exactly what we're doing and how and why it's working. So it's very practical stuff. So do check that out, as well as all of our other series, our podcast, of course, lots of content that you can find on YouTube, you can find on our website. You can find Spotify, Apple Podcast. Spotify and Apple are now visual as well, aren't they?
They are. You can see the videos on there as well.
There'll be some people watching on here.
As long as you're not driving.
As long as you're not driving.
Otherwise, you'll drive off a cliff.
Well, and for those of you that means nothing, we did a little sketch on that, didn't we? Where Darren and I drove off a cliff.
Not literally.
But we're fine. Just Darren's editing skills. There you go. That came to the fruition. Right. If you have loved this episode, then make sure you give us a review. Peter, all that I may say is massive thank you for coming on the pod. Keep in touch, and we'll be, I think I'm doing a webinar for you very soon. So I'll speak to you next week.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Peter, for being on. Yeah, we'll speak soon. All the best. Take care.
Bye-bye.
There you go. Right, well, there you go. That was Peter. He's a lovely chap. So if you are a garden centre and you are not a member of the GCA, what are you doing? What are you doing? You need to get in touch with Peter. We'll make sure we include his details. Archie, make sure you include. Oh, there's a knock at the door. There's a knock at the door.
There's a ding dong
what does
going
this
on
mean,
there.
Darren?
What could
What
that
does this mean?
I think it means we've got some post.
Some post. Whatever is going on. Oh, we've got a new text.
Got you down. Baby problems.
Wow, look at this.
Wow.
Look at this. Now you have excelled yourself.
Look at that. Someone's brought us some
Hold
post
on.
in.
Thank
you, Mr. Postman.
Thank
Goodbye.
you, Mr. Where did that come from? For those that are on audio only, they're
You're
wondering
missing
what
out.
earth is going on right now. You need to go and get it on visual. So what would just happened, for those who haven't know, is an envelope has just been delivered by the postman from
the Sky's airmail.
Very good. Very, very good. Right. This is our paid media problem. Right. Okay. What is this says? So, Jake, right, I don't know where Jake's from, but okay. Hi, Aaron, love the show. Had a quick question for you. Should we be bidding on brand? Oh, that's a good. Okay. Oh, that is a good question. Should we? So, I'm guessing they're talking about Google Ads.
Yes.
It must be Google Ads. Should you bid on brand? I'm really trying not to say it depends, but I think if I think of our clients, for the most part, yes, we bid on brand.
Sure.
And I think the reason I think it's okay to bid on brand, and what we mean is just to give some context.
Yeah,
for
I
those
was going to
that
say,
don't know.
what does that mean?
So what it means is, so we're talking Google Ads. They must be talking Google Ads if they mean bidding on brand.
I think they did. I think I mean, the peek behind the curtain, I wrote that down.
Right, yeah.
But I don't think I wrote Google on
No,
that.
no,
but
fine.
It is Google.
So should you bid on brand? We're talking Google Ads. We're probably talking like searches. So it's like if you go onto Google and you search something, should you bid on your own brand name?
Yeah,
it's a question. I know a lot of people have asked over the years. You know, we get lots of clients say to us, "Well, should we bid on brand?
Sure.
Is that a good use of our money?"
Yeah,
and I think the short answer is yes, it's a good use of money because, and I'll give you a couple of reasons why. One, if it's your brand, generally it's going to cost you pennies. So you're not going to spend much unless you are, a Nike, unless you're a huge brand with massive brand, awareness. Even if you get a few thousand clicks for your brand, you're going to pay pennies for those. So it's not going to cost you a huge amount. Mm-hmm. So, we've got some very established brands that are very well known, and they'll get several thousand searches for their brand a month, some are even to tens of thousands, but it still will only cost them a few £100s because it is literally pennies. So that's the first thing. I think beyond the cost, it's just good for you to show up for someone searching for your brand, because if you don't show up, you can be damn sure one of your competitors is going to show up. Yeah. And you don't want that. And also, one of the questions people often say with that is, what we rank organically. So our SEO is really good. We're already top. Do we need to pay ads? And my answer to that is often, yeah, that's great. But if any of your competitors choose to bid on your brand, your organic listing is going to be knocked down the page. So for the pennies it's going to cost you, just own the page. Have your paid listings show up, then have your organic list. You're owning that real estate. Yeah. You're owning that page. You're giving your competitors or anyone else no chance of visibility. You own your brand. What I would say, and what we do for all of our clients, is we make sure that their brand campaign is separate to all of the non-brand stuff. Right. So don't have it mixed in. And Performance Max, which is a campaign type within Google, make sure you, for the most part, there are a few exceptions, but if you let it, will include your brand search, which will cannibalize your results. It gets a bit technical, but so there are exceptions, but generally as a rule of thumb, we will separate and go, right, if someone's searching for brand, put it over here. But if then everything else, it's going to go here, there, or whatever. So I think the answer is, should we bid on brand? It's always going to be a case by case, but for the most part, yes, bid on brand, but separate it out so you can understand, because it's also good to understand how much search actually happens. How many people are searching for your brand? That's just good to know. If you run a business, you want to know.
Can't you do that on a Google Search Console?
Of course you can, Darren. Look at that. See, he's learning every day.
I'm a paid media expert
There you
now.
go. But you can do that through Google Search Console, but also through Google Ads, it's good to know, well, actually, I've paid for 1,000 clicks in the last month for my brand, whereas this time last year it was 500. Great. My brand awareness, those that are searching for my brand, has doubled in a year. So that's just good to know.
Yeah.
And then you can look at the correlation in terms of spend and return. And, we got clients that will do, because it's pennies in and, it's many pounds out, they'll get a 15, 20, 30 times ROAS or return on their brand spend versus return, because people, they're searching for your brand, they know they want to buy from you, they're maybe returning, they repeat, whatever. It's like printing money.
Does that mean when I search the Evergreen agency and accidentally click on the ad,
don't do that.
Does that mean that we're not losing as much money when I do that? Because that's
just stop doing it, please. So we do bid on our brand, but that's pretty much the only sort of ad. So you click away, I don't mind. I don't mind. But we only do retargeting for our stuff, because if someone's searching for our brand, we want to come up, and we do the same for our clients.
Absolutely.
There you go. Thank you, Jake. Hope that's useful.
Paid media problem.
There you go. Right, there you go. If you've got a paid media problem or something you think, do you know what, I want to know, then just ping it in. I'll do my best to answer it. My thanks to Peter. Make sure you check out the GCA. You can go to gca.org.uk and check those guys out. As I say, if you're a garden centre, if you're in the space, then do connect with me on LinkedIn. You find me Aaron Rudman Hawkins, or find the Evergreen Agency and you'll find me. As well as Darren. You find Darren Martin, connect with Darren as well.
There you go.
And make sure you just follow our content. And if you've loved this episode, we would love if you'd give us a review and just share your comments, your thoughts on the episode. We've done a couple of these sort of specials, kind of non-brand
expert specials.
Non-brand sort of episodes. So if you're liking this format where they're a bit different, then let us know and we'll do more of them, because we know lots of people in the industry and we can bring different experts on to give different perspectives. Quite interesting. Liking how the Grow with Evergreen podcast is evolving. It's great. I'm loving it. Right, there you go. Thanks so much for joining. We're off to do the next one. All the best. Take care. Hello, beautiful people. I hope you enjoyed today's Grow with Evergreen podcast. I want to ask you if you would like to be my next guest. We're looking for more home, garden, and lifestyle brands to join us. So if you're using paid media, such as Google Ads and Meta Ads, if you're willing to be honest and open, and if you're wanting to grow online, then I think you'll find our podcast incredibly helpful for your business. You can apply directly via our website. Simply click on the navigation in the top right-hand side of the website and select podcast. Fill in the application and one of my team will get back to you. Best of all, it's completely free to join us on the Grow with Evergreen podcast. I look forward to helping you grow your business very soon.